So thank you very much, Dominika, for doing this for us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And
Pleasure.
I really appreciate your time. So just going before we start, maybe
hmm
just tell us a little bit about your journey and so far, and what made you set up this business, and what way do you actually help the businesses and other people?
Okay, where would I start? So my journey as an entrepreneur started back in 2015 when I became a mother. Um, and my first company was GIS design, and it was graphic and web design, and I was also contracted to Google. So I did that for the first 2 years, and that was my very first experience of being self-employed and networking and doing all that. But then my heart really wasn't there. It was just really another job. Even though I was self-employed, it didn't feel like something I was passionate about. But I was always searching for something fulfilling, and it was quite frustrating because I did a lot of different jobs and then I was self-employed, but it never really felt right, or I was never really passionate about anything truly. And I believe there's something out there. And then back in 2017, I experienced some difficulties in my private life. So I left quite a difficult relationship, and it took a year of a career break. And I had two kids at the time who were very small. I still have two kids, but they were 1 and 2 years old. So I really needed to take some time off for just re-evaluating my life and healing. And during that year, I went back to study and I did my coaching diploma, and I also developed a creative mandala method. The method that I'm actually teaching now quite a lot, and I work with different organizations right now, with Amber Women's Refuge, delivering the workshop, and also with private groups and schools. So after a year of break, when my kids started play school, that was the time when I said, okay, I'm starting a new business. So that was 2 years ago. And it's been quite a journey. At the beginning, I was just planning to do coaching and workshops. And this is still a big part of my business. But then on the way, as I took a studio in Gastelcombe Craft Church in County Kilkenny, I allowed myself to explore the art side of me a bit more, because I have an art background. I did 6 years of art education back in Poland, and there's also a few generations of artists and craft makers in my family, but I never thought it will be my job in any way. So I kind of started implementing it a bit more. And right now we're recording from my gallery and studio, and I also have across the yard a second studio, which is creativity and wellbeing center. It's more like a classroom for the workshops. And then you ask me, how am I helping others? So I would say it is a mixture of delivering the workshops. So the workshops are pretty much using creative method and art for healing and self-discovery, and it's quite relaxing. So that would be my creative mandala workshops, but I also do design tailored workshops. So at the moment I'm working with Kilkenny Leader Partnership on a workshop for immigrants from Eastern Europe, and that will contribute to developing a new integration strategy in Kilkenny next year. So that's quite exciting. And I also do work with one-on-one coaching clients. So it's all about helping move into the next stage of life quite often, and about creating a positive change.
I think yours is a fascinating story. Absolutely. I mean, well done. And seriously, I don't know what to say. I'm lost for words. But I'm actually very fascinated. I know we don't have this like on the question, but
hmm
how do you actually use the creative methods? Maybe this is a discussion for another day, because
Yeah.
I have somebody who's doing a workshop webinar for us
hmm
tomorrow with one of our clients, and she specializes in art therapy.
Yeah.
And so, is that something like that? I know it's a question outside.
It is quite, I would say, quite similar. People would compare it to art therapy, but I'm going to show you an example. So the way I run a workshop, so during my career break, I drew 100 symbols. So they're visual symbols, and
Wow.
there are different animals and even star signs, little elements that are, I'll show you closer, just
Yeah, no,
different
I can
symbols.
see
So
it. Yeah.
I drew them myself, and then there's a few different meanings beside each one of them. And then again, someone, um, it might mean something else to a person. It's fine to interpret the symbol in a different ways. And then everybody gets a set of 100 printed symbols during the workshop, and um, then we do a bit of a reflection on what story do you want to tell. Is it about the past or hopes for the future? And then we start to organize the symbols in a circle, and then we start to color it. So this way. So it is a bit like a personalized coloring page, but it's very meaningful one, because then what often happens, people would frame it and maybe hang it in their living room, and it's quite mysterious. I mean, the people who would look at it, they have no idea what it means, but then for the person, it can actually mean quite a lot. And then they can include some photos and maybe some other elements that are meaningful. So I think it's just like giving a tool really to do something creative when they're not necessarily skilled, and they wouldn't paint, it's not their hobby. So quite often when I meet people during workshops, they say they never used paint since maybe primary or secondary school. So it's quite interesting to see that they're actually they're feeling quite playful, cutting out the elements and then putting it all together, and it's quite fun and relaxing. But at the same time, it allows people to reflect and to heal quite often.
That's fascinating. I think I will have to go and do one of your workshops, because
Yeah,
I would be one of those people who hasn't
absolutely.
touched paint after school, probably.
Yeah, but the good thing is you don't need to draw yourself. It's all about
Yeah,
cutting and putting it together and then coloring it.
yeah, I can imagine it'll be very therapeutic.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So just coming on to the next question, I mean, have you been supported by other groups or people in your journey, and do you think that was important for you?
It definitely was. I joined Network Ireland over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, actually. So just after I set up my second business, I joined Network Ireland, and for the last year, I was a committee member as well. So I was stepping up step by step. But I do think it's hugely important, because being self-employed could be a really lonely place, and having a support group, or even meeting new friends quite often. I made a good few friends out of the network, that we just meet up for coffee, or now virtual coffee, and talk about life, not just business. It's really good to have that support. And people often think about networking as getting sales out of it, but I think it's more about connections and potential collaborations, and just supporting each other. And rather than thinking what can I get out of it, maybe think first, what can you actually offer to the group, and how can you help others? And then I think the sales will come organically. And quite often it is through maybe friends of the people who are in the network, or their family or friends, because they will recommend you further, and quite often share your content on social media and so on. So it is definitely very important to be part of the group. I would highly recommend Network Ireland, but I know Chamber of Commerce could be quite good as well, and a few other groups around.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. It's a very lonely place.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you on the networking side, because you have to make friends, because people
Mm,
buy from people,
yeah.
not from businesses. So that personal touch is really important. Moving on to the next question. I mean, I you have in the very first instance, you have mentioned your journey, and how you've overcome your challenges as
Mm-hmm.
well. But just like to maybe drill down on the business side of it, what
Yeah.
sort of challenges have you met along the way, and
Mm-hmm.
how did you overcome them?
Yeah. I think quite obvious one this year for everybody is
Yeah.
the new restrictions, but I think it's more, for me, it's always looking at a problem from a different perspective. So maybe trying to find opportunities within the problem. So what I did, I was planning to expand online for a long time, and it was on my long-term to-do list. But now, after the lockdown, it became my short-term to-do list. So I put a lot of effort into moving online. So my one-on-one coaching clients, that was an easy thing to do, just move it through Zoom. But then actually organizing events online, and I started organizing free networking events as well, just to keep in touch with all the people from the area, because again, it could be quite a lonely place. But then um, I published my first coloring book for adults. So I have it here. It's the Botanical Affirmations coloring book. So again, it's combining art with, oh, this way. So you can see, you can actually color it and frame it, cut it out. And I have another book now coming shortly. It's just being test printed at the moment. So it is actually a bestseller. I didn't expect it, but it sells quite good as gifts, and um, even people buy it for children, like teenagers. So it is good to see. It is quite positive, and um, definitely that the whole lockdown allowed me to explore a bit more and see what else is out there. Um, but in terms of challenges, I think the bigger one actually, and it's quite ongoing, it's the work-life balance, because it's hard to juggle being a mother. My kids are now 4 and 5 years old, so they both started school, and also having a relationship. Um, Thankfully, my partner is quite understanding and supportive. But again, I think I love my work because it doesn't feel like work. So potentially, I think if I wouldn't have kids and my partner, I would probably work 24/7 or 7 days a week, which is not healthy. But again, I love it. So it is for me finding an actual balance, and finding time for switching off from work, and literally putting boundaries that after 8 o'clock I'm not touching my phone, and I'm having time just to relax or to read. And then again, really prioritizing when I'm working. It's more like batching tasks, and trying to be as productive as I can, and thinking, what can I actually outsource, what do I need to do myself. So it's kind of ongoing challenge to actually combine my personal life and the business.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was just looking at your book, and I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
thinking, the apps, I'm actually, myself, I use those recolor and pigment, those kind of
Mm,
apps. And I'm kind of looking at your book and saying, that's
yeah.
something I need to that would be something I would really interested to buy. And
Mm,
something which will be very,
good
very
to hear.
useful, very calming.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And even if you take time, maybe an hour every evening, it definitely helps to calm down. And it's a good routine even for before your bedtime, rather than looking at screens and
Mm.
just being overstimulated. It's more about calming down and going within, and it allows your mind to wander, which it is the state that I love, because I think when you allow your mind to wander, so it could be, driving a car, or potentially people have great ideas when they're having a shower. It's actually when you're allowing your mind to wander. So for me, it's when I have lots of great ideas. So I always have my notebook with me, and I then just quickly write it all down and come back to it later. But I think art is one of those activities when you're actually not focusing on some ideas, and you're not trying to come up with solutions, but then when you're actually allowing your mind to wander and you're being in the moment, that's when magic happens sometimes.
I think that's very, very important to understand. It is
Mm,
when you are not breaking your head over something, and like, when you go away and come back to it, and then
yeah,
create, then innovation happens. And you're
that's right.
absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. So
Mm,
you did mention about the work-life balance. That is probably
mm-hmm.
one of the biggest advice you could give. But what other advice would you give to particularly women entrepreneurs, you think, who's thinking about starting their own
Yeah,
business?
or just thinking about starting, I would say be patient, and if you can keep your day job for potentially as long as you can, or even if you have some other support. I know there are some other options available from even the local enterprise office, or potentially if you're moving from some sort of benefit to things go back to work enterprise allowance. So there's a few options out there that can actually help you financially at the start, because while some businesses might bring you the income from day one, there's a lot of startups that you wouldn't get the money out of the startup for quite a long time. It sometimes could be a year or 2 years. And I know from my own experience, it could be, investing back into business as much as I can, and then just trying to keep my expenses as low as I can, just to put back in the business and do a bit of more innovation, a bit of more new products or things like that. I think it's quite important, but it's just patience, that there's no such thing as overnight success. And I would say I would compare it to actually when you're growing a plant, you're just putting lots of different seeds, and then you need to be really patient watering it, and sometimes you might lose trust that it will grow, but eventually it will grow if you're just being consistent and you keep showing up and you're putting a lot of effort into something. It will grow. And I can definitely see this year, despite the lockdown, my plants are growing up, so I can see that um, it actually brings fruit. Like I did voluntarily work with Amber, and now we're doing work through grants, and I work with multiple groups with the outreach. So it is things like that. You need to create your own opportunities, and that's a big lesson, I would say. It's all about being proactive. And like my first radio interview, I approached them to interview me. It wasn't like me waiting for someone to come, to ask me, would you like to be on the radio? The first one, you need to do it yourself. The same with the newspapers and things like that. You actually need to put yourself out there first. Otherwise, you might be just waiting for a really long time, because people might not be even aware of your business. Um, the same with business awards. It's quite often you need to push the application out there, and you need to, make an effort even to create that application form. And there's a lot of work going behind that. So be patient, um, and create your own opportunities. Just be proactive, and don't compare yourself to others. That would be a big one.
Yeah, that's great, because yeah, patience is the
Mm,
name of the game, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, but tell me about it. The businesses which doesn't give you revenue instantly.
I know, but you need to love it. I think
But
if it
yeah,
feels like, um, for me, it feels more than work. It's more of a, vocation is a big word, but the business, my business right now, it kind of came organically from my hardship and my personal experiences, that I reflect back, and I thought that through all my life, art was my therapy. So whenever I was going through a difficult time, I was always going back to painting, because it was therapeutic and it was
mm,
relaxing. So I thought, how can I actually translate it into maybe a workshop or a tool or a method that people who don't have skills can benefit the same way. So I was actually struggling for years trying to find a perfect career, and then at the end it found me from completely different angle. It was more of connecting my own dots and being true to myself and using my own experiences and my own story to actually help others. And the fulfillment that I have from even running workshops to with Amber, it's just huge. Like, you can't compare it to any other job. It's just so meaningful because I've been there. It's not, it doesn't feel like work in any way. So I feel quite lucky.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Mm,
that's your passion. And
yeah,
how many people can actually live for their passion or work for their passion, you know?
yeah.
I left my job the day I realized, on 2, 3 Sundays, I realized, oh my God, I have to go back again to work. You know, that feeling,
Mm,
I don't have that. I don't earn as much,
yeah.
but I don't have that feeling, and that's a very liberating feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it doesn't mean that you will love every part of your work.
Mm.
I still need to look after my accounts that I absolutely hate, or do admin work that I don't really like. But um, I think it's not about finding something you're passionate about. It's more about finding something you're passionate about enough to do the bad things that are actually, or the unpleasant things that are associated with that job. So, there will still be days that they're not very exciting and you need to do a lot of tasks that are still not creative and not exciting at all. But then running a workshop, or actually working with people, it makes it all totally worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that actually brings very nicely to our last question. So, how does the future look like, and what's your vision for the future?
And my vision for the future. It looks quite exciting, actually. As I mentioned, I've been developing a workshop now with local enterprise office and Kilkenny Leader Partnership. Um, I never thought actually that I'll be working with immigrants. I'm originally from Poland. I came to Ireland 8 years ago, but I was never really clinging to a community. I thought I just need to learn the language as much as I can, and I need to, embrace everyone around me, not just my own culture. So I don't really have many Polish friends, and I didn't cling to it, and I didn't expect I'll be ever doing work around it. So now we're working on a workshop. So I designed a workshop that will contribute to the integration strategy, and I've been also invited to work with the Polish consulate in Kilkenny. So that's ongoing. So there will probably some long-term um, collaborations coming. But I'm also developing a new workshop that I'm planning to launch next year. So the way Creative Mandala is my first signature workshop, I had this idea in my head for the second one, and it's really taking shape. So it's going to be a 4-week course, and I'm planning to trademark it, and I'm planning to do an accreditation program for coaches, so they can teach it worldwide then, and I'll just provide the tools and the methods. And I'm also developing a corporate offering. So that's going to be around creative leadership. So that's going to be like 1 day and half-day talks and a training, just to develop that
Um,
side of leaders.
that is brilliant. I like your idea about the
Mm,
trademarking and the
mm,
accreditation. It's really progressive thinking. I have to say, we have to talk outside this at some point. Yeah, no, I have your number, and we'll be really very, very interested to kind of do
yeah,
some kind of collaboration. We can
absolutely. Yeah.
provide you with the digital tool, whereas you can provide our clients with the expertise on the, because what you're doing is absolutely
Mm.
fascinating. I love it.
Thank you. There's a great book, actually. I would totally recommend it to everyone starting in the business world. It's called, what's the name of it? Blue Ocean Strategy, I think. Um, and it's about, I would say, thinking outside of the box. So there is a red ocean, and red ocean will become actually, let's say, the businesses that are all very similar to each other. So maybe having a few coffee shops in the town, and then you're planning to open another one. There's very little space to be innovative, but it's quite competitive. So that'll be like a red ocean. And then thinking outside of the box and coming up with the new ideas, which is a blue ocean. So just creating a new product or service or market. So let's say Netflix a while ago was an example of a blue ocean, or some other innovative ideas out there. So I read the book, I don't know, over a year ago, and I was always fascinated by that way of thinking. And I think the key is just being true to yourself and connecting your own dots and ideas, rather than looking at your competitors and trying to copy someone else. You'll get pretty tired by doing it. I think especially in the area that we are in, around well-being and coaching and training, there's so many coaches out there. You need to find your own niche and something that you're truly passionate about. Otherwise, it's just, there's no point copying someone else.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Like every time we talk
Yeah.
about well-being and health and well-being, everybody says this is a very crowded market,
Mm.
but it's creating that niche, knowing what you do best
Yeah.
and what you're passionate about. I definitely think that you need passion, otherwise it's impossible to run your own
Yeah.
business. But absolutely delighted to talk to you. It was so easy to talk to and to listen to you. I
Thank you.
really thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And
And I'll talk to
we'll
you
be in
soon,
touch. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
the two of us can have a virtual coffee and see
Yeah.
how we can collaborate.
Yeah.
It's always, these kind of discussions bring up
Mm.
opportunities of collaboration. I'm a big fan of collaboration, so
Yeah.
definitely we would love to talk to you and see where, if the two of us can do
Perfect.
something together. It would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for having
Thank you
me.
so much.